Innogen's unique interdisciplinary approach brings together an understanding of how innovative value chains are developed and smarter, more adaptive regulatory processes are shaped, along with more effective engagement of the stakeholders that are affected by the new technologies. Innogen has created a widely applicable set of innovative approaches and methods that seek to improve the success rate in delivering innovative products from the life sciences that are both societally acceptable and economically viable. So in the early stages of developing a new technology, it's often really difficult to see what will be used for eventually. If you take lasers, for example, when they were first developed, they thought they might make handy weapons. And now they're in everything from consumer electronics to precision surgery. And following this slide, we have Edinburgh's own Alistair Elphick with his sperm shaker that uses laser optical tweezers to hold a sperm cell in place while you can non-destructively evaluate its quality for in vitro fertilization. So we could have had a negative backlash to this technology based on its military history, but it's now used to meet public needs we didn't even know we had when it was first developed. Things have been different for GM crops. This is Lord Melchett destroying a GM crop. He was arrested, tried, and acquitted. When the judge acquitted him, he ruled that even if he genuinely believed that GM crops are if he genuinely believed that GM crops are dangerous, he was justified in destroying them if he had that genuine belief. And I think what you could justify on that precedent. So environmental groups like Greenpeace and others regularly produce what they call scientific evidence to support their anti-GM stance. And this has made it difficult for most people to know what to believe and what not to believe in the sea of claims and counterclaims that are out there in the media. And then you have other scientists and social scientists who take part in this process, diluting the quality of the evidence that supports decision making. And they use their academic expertise to generate apparently independent analyses that are then used by NGOs to give political support. And there was last summer a crop trial at Rothamsted. Rothamsted Research was threatened with destruction by the pressure group Take the Flower Back. This was a wheat that would have been resistant to insect attack, and that in this case the destruction was prevented by police action. So now the anti-GM attention is being shifted to the new technique of synthetic biology, with campaigns by the same NGOs that have been so successful in opposing GM crops in Europe, particularly a group calling themselves the chimpanzees of the future. So can Mother Earth feed the world? This is the big challenge facing us over the next 50 years, predicted by John Beddington, who was the previous chief scientific advisor. And outside Europe, GM crops are a contribution to that. They're the fastest growing agricultural innovation in history. They're now grown on 160 million hectares globally. And of the GM crops in use today, one of the most significant benefits is the reduction in the use of pesticides, particularly in cotton. In the USA, GM cotton has led to a reduction of about 30% in overall insecticide use, and in developing countries it's enabling small farmers to grow cotton, whereas they couldn't before do so because they couldn't afford the pesticides to make it happen. So who produces GM crops? Well, it's entirely big multinational companies, and over 60% of the GM crops in use come from two American companies, DuPont and Monsanto. Europe could have had a major role in this new technology, but the impact of European NGO activities has been to hand this big prize over to the American multinationals. Now, there are only big companies in this area. No small company can afford to develop the technology for the long time and the expensive regulatory process that it would take. So big companies only, no small companies, unless in support of the big ones. So how do we get out of this mess? So this is Archimedes, who predicted that if you gave him a long enough lever, he could move the world. And for GM technologies and synthetic biology, I think we'll need at least 2 levers. One, to reduce the political influence of the anti-GM advocacy groups, along with a more adaptive approach to governance and regulation. And that's what Innogen tries to do with its methodologies that operate in this area, linking innovators, stakeholders and governance, and looking particularly at the interactions between them. But if you look at what's happening in Europe, a major, potentially sustainable European industry has been hamstrung by pressure groups that have had a disproportionate influence on public opinion and also on European and international regulatory systems. And some of us believe that this is not the best possible outcome. This is Mark Lynas, who was a Greenpeace activist, has destroyed GM crops in the past, and now says that he thinks he was wrong, and he's parted company with Greenpeace, and he won't now be supporting them. He's joined by Greenpeace's ex-president, Patrick Moore, who says he would not now join Greenpeace. But nevertheless, politicians, not just in Europe but internationally and in a range of other countries, are still heavily influenced by anti-GM propaganda, which has very little justification. So, are the storm clouds rolling away over Europe? And what will 21st century agriculture look like? What ideology will be in charge in the church? Who will own the fields? And what will the cash cows be producing? We think we need a better approach to regulation and governance. And we also think perhaps we can maybe learn a bit from the past. So this is 14th century Siena. The city's governors met in the great hall of the Palazzo Pubblico, overlooked by this mural representing good governance, flanked by peace, fortitude, prudence, magnanimity, temperance and justice. This would be a good place to start in our attempts to master the universe. This is Edoardo Paolozzi's sculpture in the Dean Gallery in Edinburgh, and there's a clear sense of power and control, but if you look carefully, he's not wearing glasses, he's actually blind. So this illustrates that no matter what your perspective, we should keep a sense of humility about our foresighting abilities. Thank you.